This right here is the Sony PlayStation VR. Time to review it. Virtual reality. Once considered only possible in the works of science fiction. Well, fast forward to today and everybody's talking about it. The gaming industry has been experimenting with VR since the 90s, but it wasn't until recent years that VR has finally become more practical, affordable, and usable. Consumer VR headsets like the Oculus Rift and HTC Vive didn't hit the market until around 2015 or 2016, and they were really impressive. The only downside is at the time they were very expensive, they weren't really all that practical yet, and you had to have a pretty beefy PC to actually make it function properly. Hence, the PlayStation VR. Released in late 2016, the PlayStation VR was an add-on for the PlayStation 4, which obviously gave the system VR capabilities. Launching at $400 US, the PSVR was much more affordable than the HTC Vive or Oculus Rift, and really only needed a PlayStation 4 to function properly. So because of that, the PSVR was one of the easiest and cheapest ways to get into VR at the time. It's a little difficult to say exactly how many PSVR headsets were actually sold, but it's estimated to be around 5 to 6 million units so far, which honestly for PlayStation's very first VR headset, that's actually not too bad. Now that doesn't sound like much compared to the massive sales of the PS4, but Sony was still able to deliver a great product in a niche market. Now I've been wanting a PSVR headset since I first picked up a PS4, but $400 was just kind of out of my price range at the time, and it wasn't until recently that the PSVR headset came way down in price and I was finally able to pick one up for a good deal. And I am very happy with it. It is awesome. And while yes, the PSVR is almost 6 years old, and as of 2022 there's much more affordable and honestly more convenient options out there like the Oculus Quest, but even in 2022 I'd still say the PSVR is still a really good option, especially if you have a PS4. And it's compatible with PS5 as well. And Sony is actually developing a PSVR 2 for PS5 that should be arriving in the near future, which I am super excited about. So let's take a closer look at this thing, shall we? So on the front of the headset, we've got 5 lights right here that will illuminate to basically help the PlayStation camera track the headset. On the left side of the headset, we have a PlayStation logo. And on the right side, same thing. On the bottom of the headset, we have a microphone and a button to adjust the actual headset itself. So for people who wear glasses, that way they can actually use the headset. On the inside of the headset, we have 2 viewing lenses, a PlayStation logo right there, and a head sensor to basically tell the headset if you are actually wearing the headset or not. On the back, we have 2 more tracking lights, a button to adjust the headset strap itself, and then a knob to lock the strap in place. We'll also find the wire that connects to the headset, which houses this little control panel right here. We have a power button to turn the headset on or off. We have a microphone mute button and volume controls right here. And then we also have a headphone jack for plugging in headphones. And then at the end of the cable, we have the ports that actually connect to the processor box for the PlayStation VR headset. We've got an HDMI connector, and then we also have something that kind of looks like an HDMI connector, but it's like some sort of Sony proprietary port. I want to say this controls the video going into the headset, and then this controls the stereoscopic 3D as well as other VR functionality. And if you're using the headset in a larger room, luckily you can use an extension cable. Here's the PlayStation VR processing box. This is basically the middleman between the PS4 and the VR headset itself. So this does all of the actual like VR functionality processing and whatnot, and then the PS4 basically communicates via a USB cable to this thing regarding like rendering the graphics and whatnot. So on the front of the box itself, we have a Sony logo, a indicator light. This will glow red when the processor box is off and will glow white when the processor box is on. And here's where your PlayStation VR headset connects to. And I'm not able to show it off right now because I have this thing on command strips, but you can actually push this part back. That way you can access these ports better. On the top of the box we have a PlayStation logo, of course, can't forget that. Here's the back of the processor box where we find a cooling fan, AC power, USB to communicate with the PS4, and then we have an HDMI in, which goes from the PS4 to the processor box, and then HDMI out, which goes from the processor box to your TV. So what exactly is powering the PSVR headset? Well, besides the PS4 itself. Well, for starters, for a display, it uses a 5.7-inch OLED 100-degree field of view screen with a max resolution of 960 by 1080 per eye and supports between 90 to 120 Hz refresh rate. For sound, it supports 3D audio through the headphone jack, and of course, as I mentioned before, it has a built-in microphone right on the headset itself. For input, it uses a total of 9 positional tracking LEDs, which are tracked via the PlayStation camera. For controller input, you can use either DualShock 4 controller, PlayStation Aim controller, or PlayStation Move controllers. The PSVR headset measures in at 187 by 185 by 277 millimeters and finally weighs about 600 grams. Now you can use a DualShock 4 controller with the PSVR headset, and that does work with most games, but there are some that require additional accessories, like the PlayStation Move controllers. Sony originally released the PlayStation Move controllers back in 2009 on the PS3, back when they were trying to have a competitor to the Wii's remote capabilities. They ended up reusing these for the PSVR headset, which is a little lame. They didn't really update a whole lot on these, except they did change it to micro USB instead of mini USB. But they functionally they work perfectly fine with the VR headset. I do believe this newer style of Move controllers are still compatible with the PS3. I haven't personally tried it yet, but I can imagine they probably still work on there. And here are my PSVR games. These are PlayStation 4 games that will only work with PlayStation VR, as you can see by the header right there on the top of the case. I don't have a whole lot currently, but luckily since PSVR 2 was on the way, PSVR specific PS4 games are coming way down in price, and luckily, surprisingly, they're still making some new releases for PSVR. So yeah, it just goes to show, despite the PSVR's age, Sony's still surprisingly trucking along with support. So first up we have Drive Club VR. This was originally a game that was released fairly early in the PS4's lifespan, and then about 2 years later it got a updated version that now uses VR. It's basically the exact same game as the original Drive Club, except now you can play it in VR. It's actually pretty cool. It controls really nice. There's a wide selection of cars and tracks to choose from. Unfortunately, since Evolution Studios shut down recently, I believe they shut down the servers for Drive Club and Drive Club VR back in 2020. So most of the functionality of this game is completely inaccessible. But despite that, it's still a lot of fun playing the game offline. If you love yourself some VR racing games, Drive Club is definitely a good choice. Eagle Flight. This is obviously a VR game where you play as an eagle, flying around the beautiful city of Paris. It's a pretty decent game, especially if you're looking for a more like laid-back VR experience. It's not too terribly deep, especially in the story mode. There's not really a whole lot there anyway, but there's still some fun to be had. Eagle Flight's a pretty decent VR game. If you were ever curious about what it's like to fly as an eagle in first person, well, you've got the perfect game. Loading Human Chapter 1. I can't really say anything about this game, considering I literally just got it in the mail today, and I haven't played it yet. I do plan on playing it tonight, though. So, yeah, unfortunately I can't really say anything about this one. Penn Teller Vr. Frankly unfair, unkind, unnecessary, and underhanded. If you've never seen Penn Teller before, you owe it to yourself to see these guys. These guys are probably some of the best magicians there are out there. They are just absolutely amazing to watch. I haven't played a whole lot of this game yet, but I've heard some pretty good things about it. And from what I've played so far, it's actually really, really enjoyable. The best part is just the interactions that Penn and Teller have with the player. It is just... it's pretty fun, at least from what I've played so far. If you're looking for a game to play with friends to make them look absolutely ridiculous playing VR, this game will do just that. Rigs, Mechanized Combat League. It's an alright game. I didn't play a whole lot of it. It kind of reminds me of Titanfall, but in VR and just the actual like mech part itself. It's a pretty decent game. I know I've heard some pretty good things about it, but it just wasn't really for me. But I still recommend it. There's some fun to be had. And surprisingly, you can still find plenty of online matches with this game. And finally, we have Iron Man VR. This was a huge release for PlayStation VR back in 2020. And plus, it was a PSVR exclusive. I absolutely loved the Iron Man movie starring Robert Downey Jr. And when I saw Iron Man VR, I knew I had to try it out. And I'd say it's pretty good. Not great, but there's still a lot of fun to be had with this game. The voice acting's good, it looks absolutely beautiful, and it controls actually pretty decent. It's not all perfect though. It can get a little repetitive at times, and honestly there's not really a whole lot of replay value after you complete the main story. That's really the biggest downside about this game. But I still absolutely recommend playing Iron Man VR at least once. It is actually a really, really fun experience. Besides VR-only PS4 games, there were also some games that were later updated to support PSVR. Just as an example, like Gran Turismo Sport was later updated to have a PSVR mode built in. Okay, I babbled on long enough. Let's show this thing in action, damn it. Alright, we got the headset all hooked up. And when the VR headset is off, the processor box itself is surprisingly quiet. It gets a little louder when the VR headset is on, but it's not too terribly noticeable. So, in order to turn on the headset, all we gotta do is just press the power button on the control panel. And we'll hear a beep from the processor box. And the two lights on the back of the headset light up. And we get a notification on screen. Oh, just went away for a second there. It basically said that VR headset is connected, and it said like review your surroundings just to make sure that you're not gonna like injure yourself or damage anything while playing VR. That's basically all it said. But yeah, and then we're all ready to go. So once the VR headset is booted up, basically it will display anything that is on the TV screen, whether it be the main menu of the PS4 or like a game that's running. Even like non-VR games, you can actually play straight through the VR headset. It's not going to have any VR capabilities, obviously, so it's not going to have like any head tracking, but you can still play even standard PS4 games through the VR headset. It'll just display it instead of actually like, you get it. All right, let's see this thing in action. So once you first boot into a VR application or game, you'll get this warning message on the screen that says before use, read the health and safety warnings in the VR headset instruction manual. Carefully follow all instructions for setup and use. The VR headset is not for use by children under the age of 12. Review surroundings and clear obstacles before use. Take steps to prevent pets, children, and other obstacles entering the area during use. And the most important thing of all, some people may experience motion sickness, nausea, disorientation, blurred vision, or other discomfort while viewing virtual reality content. If any of these symptoms are experienced, stop using immediately and remove the VR headset. VR can affect many people differently. I know myself, after about 30 minutes or so, I start to get disoriented. I start getting blurred vision, and I get like a really bad headache. So after a while, I usually have to take a break. That's usually the worst case scenario. For the most part, VR doesn't really affect me too terribly too terribly bad. But like I said, it might not be the same for everybody. So after reading this warning message, we can press OK to continue. And then you can see myself on the screen, which is what the VR camera is showing, or what the VR camera is seeing, I should say. This is just a way to see yourself in the camera, to check your surroundings, just to make sure that there's nothing in the way while you're playing VR. And it also says for best results, position yourself 5 to 7 feet from the camera. I'm about 4.5 to 5 feet away, and it seems to work pretty well. So once we review our surroundings, we can press X and go from there. You get a real sense of depth when you play VR. Like, holy crap, like things that are like really far away, they actually feel far away. And likewise, things that are really up close to the screen, like my ship, like it actually feels like I can just reach out and touch it. It's just absolutely insane. It's awesome. And unlike most VR headsets, despite the PSVR not having built-in head tracking capabilities, even using the VR camera, like it still works really, really well. Like as you can see, I'm moving my head around here, and it's basically reading my movements one-to-one. Just like the headset, the PlayStation camera also reads the gyroscopic movements of the DualShock 4 like one-to-one, which is just so freaking cool. I just can't believe like how accurate that is. That is just so cool. One thing that can feel kind of strange while playing VR is the fact that you can't like physically move through the game world by like walking or running, because obviously the PSVR doesn't have that capability of like reading your movements like that. Like obviously I can lean forward and I can lean backwards, and likewise I can lean to the left and lean to the right, and it does a pretty good job with like reading those movements. But if I want to move Astro here through the game world, obviously I have to use the DualShock 4 and actually like physically make him move. And the fact that I'm not moving right now, but the game is, it it feels really strange. That's kind of where most of the disorientation comes from. I know that to some people it might not affect them all that much. I know for myself, at least, especially when I'm playing racing games, I get really disoriented after a while. Just like the DualShock 4 controller, the PlayStation camera does a pretty good job with reading the movements one-to-one of the PlayStation Move controllers. Like, yeah, obviously they just reused the same Move controllers that were on the PS3 from like 2009, and they didn't really change a whole lot with the design, but honestly, they still work really, really well. So as you can see, if I flail my hands like a frickin' idiot, like that's my actual movements in real life. Like it's pretty damn close to one-to-one. There's a tiny, tiny bit of latency. I'm not entirely sure if that has something to do with the PlayStation camera itself or the Move controllers. I'm not entirely sure. But there's a tiny bit of delay, but it's really not all that noticeable. If there's one minor issue that I have with the PSVR, especially with the Move controllers, and this kind of also applies with the DualShock 4, but like I said before, in order for it to sufficiently function, you have to have at least 5 to 7 feet of distance from you and the PlayStation camera. Because if you're any closer or any further, you start running into some issues. So like right now I have my controllers like right in front of the camera. If I lower them ever so slightly, you start seeing my movements aren't really all that accurate, because obviously the camera can't actually see my controllers. The same thing happens if I have my hands too high. So if I want to reach way up here, obviously I can't, since the PlayStation camera can no longer see my movements. But for the most part, as long as you maintain within 5 to 7 feet of the PlayStation camera, you should be pretty good. And so, that was the PlayStation VR. For Sony's very first foray into virtual reality, and considering it's the first virtual reality headset I've ever owned, I gotta say, I am very impressed. This thing is awesome. But the most important question is, should you pick one up? Yes! And no. Let me elaborate. Even though PlayStation VR was one of the cheapest and easiest ways to get into VR at the time, it's currently 2022, and there are way more cheaper, accessible, and quite honestly more practical options out there, like the Oculus Quest and especially the Oculus Go. Compared to this thing, those devices that I just mentioned are pretty much set to go right out of the box, because it has built-in Android, it has built-in head tracking, and pretty much you just download the games you want to play through some sort of like Android app store and you're ready to go. With this, it's a little more complicated to set up. You need a PS4 first and foremost. You need the processor box to actually run the headset itself, and along with a spaghetti of wires. It's honestly kind of a pain in the ass to set up. Luckily, with PSVR 2 on the horizon, Sony did say that they are doing away with the processor box and the spaghetti of wires, and with the next generation headset, they're going to be using one single USB-C cable to drive the whole headset, which, thank God, that is awesome. But until that comes out, the original PSVR is still a very, very good VR option, despite what I said earlier about the cheaper, more practical options out there. If you want the absolute cheapest and easiest way to get into VR in 2022, I do still recommend either the Oculus Quest or Oculus Go or any of those other similar headsets. But if you're interested in the PSVR exclusives like Iron Man VR and Drive Club VR, yeah, I do definitely recommend the PSVR. It has quite a lot to offer. And even the third-party games like Beat Saber, Penn Teller VR, and Job Simulator VR run pretty good on the PSVR. So if you're interested in picking up one of these, it is the perfect time to do so, because the headsets are much more affordable than they were at launch, and majority of the games are way, way cheaper now. And surprisingly, they're still making new games for the PSVR. So with that being said, that wraps up another review. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Oh my God, what the hell was that? Look up. Do I really want to? Oh my God! Jeez. Penn and Teller, that was not nice. It just goes to show how immersive VR is. that really got me. Jeez.